A galaxy on the brink. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was meant to be a place of diplomacy, a temple of reason where empires found common ground. Tonight it was a battlefield. Tensions crackled like charged plasma, every species watching with bated breath. Holographic banners of the Galactic Council shimmered overhead, displaying the words, "Final Negotiation, Humanity versus the Coalition." In the center of the chamber, the human delegation stood motionless. Ambassador James Calloway, humanity's representative, had remained silent for the last 3 minutes. The council chamber's towering seats were filled with hundreds of alien dignitaries, most shifting uncomfortably under Calloway's cold, unforgiving stare. Finally, he spoke. "You murdered 9,000 unarmed humans." Silence. Not a single alien spoke. "You justified it as a necessary deterrent," Calloway continued, voice like a blade scraping over stone. "You called it preemptive stability." His eyes burned. "And now you beg us to accept your peace." The council's gamble. Archminister Veltrax of the Hegaran Dominion cleared his throat. His scaled face twitched as he leaned forward. "The tragic loss of life was regrettable," he said, voice slow and measured. "But humanity's continued military expansion forces us to." Calloway's fist slammed into the table. The sound thundered across the chamber. Every alien flinched. "Regrettable?" His voice was poison. "You ambushed an unarmed research station, slaughtered families, erased a colony from existence. And now, because your fleets fear our retaliation, you offer peace." His lip curled. "You don't want peace. You want time." Veltrax's nostrils flared. "Ambassador, I urge you to consider the consequences of rejecting this offer." Calloway leaned forward, his face inches from the holographic console. "We already have." Then, with an eerie calmness, he reached forward and deactivated the human delegation's microphone. The moment everything changed. A ripple of pure dread swept through the chamber. The microphone had never been deactivated before. It was a signal. A declaration. Ambassador Calloway stood up. So did every human in the room. Without a word, the Terran delegation turned and walked away. The council erupted. "Ambassador, stop this at once. This is a violation of diplomatic. You cannot just walk away." Calloway didn't look back. Humanity had made its choice, and the galaxy would learn the price of betrayal. The council's realization. High Sovereign Tal of the Zorvith Dominion turned to Veltrax. "You fool," he hissed, voice filled with terror. "You just signed our death warrant." Veltrax's frills pulsed with agitation. "They cannot defeat us. The combined fleets of the council." Tal's eyes glowed with fury. "Do you know what you've done? You have never fought humans in total war." Veltrax scoffed. "They will negotiate once they calm down." Tal's claws curled into a fist. "There will be no negotiation. They gave us their final warning." Then the chamber shook. The lights flickered. And an urgent message flashed across the Galactic Council's command screens. "Warning, Terran military assets have left their stations. Fleets mobilizing." Veltrax's blood ran cold. Humanity had just abandoned peace. And the war had already begun. Humans abandon peace talks. The Galactic Council realizes their mistake. Section 2, The First Retaliation. The nightmare begins. High Sovereign Talus blood chilled as he stared at the emergency broadcast. "Warning, Terran military assets have left their stations. Fleets mobilizing." This is a bluff," Veltrax muttered, his scaled fingers trembling over the data feed. "They need time. They need logistics. They need." A shrill alarm pierced through the council chambers. "Incoming distress signal, Soren Prime." Veltrax turned ashen. Soren Prime was burning. The human answer to betrayal. The Zorvith dreadnought Varkesh had stood as an unchallenged fortress above Soren Prime, protecting one of the Coalition's largest industrial worlds. It had defenses that could withstand a planetary siege. It lasted 7 minutes. Admiral Jorik, commander of the Soren fleet, had watched in horror as an unidentified Terran strike force emerged from FTL. Without warning, without demands, and without mercy. The Terran warships did not request surrender. They did not hail the planetary defenses. They annihilated them. The fall of Soren Prime. The Varkesh fired first. It never got a second shot. The USS Revenant, a Terran warship that hadn't even existed in Galactic Council records, appeared behind it like a ghost out of the void. In an instant, the Varkesh's shields collapsed. Then, the human warship tore a hole straight through it. A single kinetic impact, moving at near-relativistic speeds, ripped the dreadnought in half. Jorik barely had time to react before the Terran fleet descended like wolves upon the helpless world below. Soren Prime's orbital defenses, designed to hold against weeks of siege warfare, vanished in under an hour. The final transmission from Admiral Jorik was filled with panic. "We surrender. We surrender. We." The feed cut to static. The Galactic Council's horror. Veltrax stared at the hollow feed, his throat dry, his chest heaving. "Impossible," he whispered. The entire council chamber was silent. Soren Prime, one of the strongest strongholds in the coalition, had been wiped from existence. Tal exhaled, voice shaking. The humans never intended to negotiate. They only needed to delay us. Veltrax turned to him, eyes wide. "What?" The Zorvath sovereign's mandibles clenched. "While we sat here, arguing over diplomacy, they were already preparing the war." He pointed at the holomap. "Look, their fleets aren't mobilizing." Veltrax's stomach twisted as he examined the data. The Terran fleet movements weren't scattered like a reactionary force. They were precise. They weren't scrambling for war. They had already planned it. The human mindset, war without mercy. The Council had made a grave miscalculation. They assumed the humans would hesitate. They assumed humans would posture and threaten before committing to war. But humanity wasn't interested in an honorable conflict. They had been stabbed in the back. And now they would burn the stars to make sure it never happened again. The next target. A transmission interrupted the Council's panic. Live feed from outer system scouts. The display flickered, then revealed an armada. Not a battle group. Not a deterrence force. A total war fleet. It moved in perfect formation, unrelenting and unstoppable. At its head, a monstrous battleship loomed. USS Vengeance. The feed cut out. A single transmission followed. "We do not negotiate with murderers. We do not forgive traitors. You took our people. Now we take everything. Your worlds will burn." The silence before the storm. The council chamber was eerily quiet. Gone was the usual bureaucratic squabbling. Gone were the diplomatic gestures, the debates, the careful calculations. There was only one reality now. The humans had committed to total war. And the slaughter had begun. The massacre at Selvaris. Selvaris IV was the military heart of the Zalari Dominion. Over 100 warships guarded its skies. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers occupied its surface. It was thought to be unbreakable. It lasted 3 hours. The first warning came when local space went dark. No ships. No energy signatures. Just an eerie emptiness where the stars should have been. Then the void cracked open. Terran stealth carriers, massive warships with hulls darker than the abyss, emerged from the silence. They did not waste time. They did not issue ultimatums. They erased the Zalari fleet. One moment, Selvaris IV was defended by 100 ships. The next, none remained. From orbit, Terran tungsten rods rained down, kinetic strikes moving at hypersonic speeds. Zalari ground forces were not just killed. They were pounded into the crust. Selvaris IV did not just fall. It was erased. The Council's last meeting. "We are losing entire fleets," Tal whispered, his mandibles trembling. "Worlds. Populations. This isn't a war, this is an extinction event," Veltrax finished, his voice hollow. A dozen alien leaders sat motionless in the council chamber. Just days ago they had demanded human surrender. Now they were begging for survival. A frazzled intelligence minister slammed her clawed fingers onto the data feed. "They do not stop. They do not negotiate. They are targeting key worlds with surgical precision." Veltrax gritted his teeth. "They want to make sure we can never fight back." The USS Vengeance arrives. The USS Vengeance, the largest warship ever seen in the Orion Arm, appeared in high orbit over Kravix 7, the capital world of the Kravik Imperium. Kravix 7 was the seat of an empire. It had ruled for centuries. It would not see another sunrise. Admiral Riker stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, arms crossed. His voice was cold, calculated. Fire. The death of a planet. At first, Kravik 7's orbital defenses held firm. Energy shields flared, surface-to-space weapons fired, and Kravik warships scrambled to intercept. None of it mattered. The Vengeance fired its planet cracker cannons. The first shot shattered the orbital fleet. The second shot ruptured the crust. The third shot split the planet in half. Millions of Kravik voices screamed across the emergency channels. Then, silence. The Kravik Imperium ceased to exist. The last transmission. The Galactic Council, watching helplessly, received a final message from the Terran fleet. Calloway's voice was calm. I see. You made your choice. There was no declaration. No demand for surrender. Because there was no surrender. Only punishment. A galaxy on fire. By the time the remnants of the Galactic Council gathered for what would be their final meeting, there were barely a dozen of them left. The war had lasted 6 standard weeks. 6 weeks, and an entire interstellar empire lay in ruins. The Kravik Imperium? Dead. The Zalari Dominion? Nothing but ash. The Zorvath hegemony? Erased. Even now, reports poured in. Dozens of civilizations were ceasing to exist. Not just losing battles. Being removed from history. The last betrayal. Veltrax sat in the hollowed-out ruins of what had once been the Galactic Council's great chamber. He was one of the few survivors. He had no illusions of victory. There was none to be had. Then the final blow came. A transmission flickered to life. An emergency feed coming from the very heart of the remaining Coalition-controlled space. It was one of their own. High Sovereign Tal. Veltrax's blood ran cold as he saw Terran officers standing behind him. Tullus' mandibles clicked slowly, his tone emotionless. I advise immediate surrender. Humanity has offered me a choice. Veltrax clenched his fists. You traitor. Tullus' voice never wavered. I chose to live. Then the feed cut out. The final hour. Humanity had not come to conquer. They had come to punish. But for the last few remaining species that chose submission over extinction, humanity had another option. Calloway's voice echoed through every council system. You were given a choice before. You ignored it. His pause was deliberate. This is your last chance. Veltrax knew what came next. Surrender. Or extinction. The war ends, but humanity does not forget. The Galactic War had lasted 43 days. By the end, dozens of species were gone. Entire homeworlds nothing but lifeless husks. The Council? Dissolved. What remained of the great interstellar empires were now client states. Vassals of humanity. The war had not just ended. It had rewritten the balance of power in the galaxy. And one truth remained. Humanity forgives nothing. Humanity forgets nothing. The galaxy thought they could control humanity. Now they live under their rule. Want more stories of human dominance? Subscribe now because this is only the beginning.